Hey everybody, welcome again. Each the News. We've got Cando, I should say, Wango. He's a cybersecurity solutions architect over at a company called All. How are you doing, Cando? How are you?
I'm good. I'm very good.
All right, man. So you got the New York City background there, I believe.
Yeah, that's the Brooklyn Bridge.
That's right. Good stuff. Been on that a few times. So, my friend, so tell us a bit about about All. What do you guys do?
Yep. So All Covered is the IT services division of Konica Minolta. We were acquired back in 2011, and it really was this vision from Konica Minolta to be able to pivot into helping companies broaden their, IT services, be able to really improve what they were doing. We were an independent company before they bought us. We were a nationwide IT services organization, very concerned with making sure that the customers that we worked with were getting value for the things that we were doing, from things like patching, patch management, email defense, endpoint protection, all of the different things that go into kind of outsourced IT.
It's kind of a strange marriage, though, So why do you think they ended up getting? I mean, obviously, everybody wants to get into the cybersecurity space, right? Why do you think that company made that acquisition?
Yeah, I think it had everything to do with them being customer focused.
Mm,
They had a group of business products, kind of, the copiers, the print environment, and they really want to be, from a social standpoint, uh, a vendor that has the best interests of the customer environment. And the next thing that you would kind of want to achieve after you've dealt with the hardware is really kind of this IT services that surround them. So to me, it made a lot of sense. They are an innovator. They're not an organization that sits and waits for things to happen. They try to make things happen through kind of their acquisitions and their processes.
yeah,
Uh,
right on. I think as well too, kind of it's like a lot of companies are realizing if you don't have any kind of a cybersecurity play, like I'm not quite sure how you survive in this digital first world, right? It's like, yeah, you can hang out for a bit, but then your copier is going to get hit at some point when you update them, and that's going to be a problem, and all hell breaks loose, man, when you get an attack. So I think it's kind of a smart business. For me, it's like a hardening of your business posture, right? Because if you just leave it up to chance and without the cybersecurity, hard shell, if you will, some resilience baked into your playbook, then man, you're just you're a sitting duck. We'll leave that for the smart people who did the acquisition, but let's dig into this. So you guys provide obviously a wide range, right, of security solutions, and being the architect, you kind of know this at a DNA level. So, how do you guys work in the market right now? Are you directly working with their customers? Are you working with partners? Like, how does that landscape look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's all the above. My role primarily, I'm working with customers, customers that have environments, whether that's corporate, maybe, small businesses, medium businesses. And the role that I really play is to talk to them about their security posture and try to get an understanding of it, and then help them with the gaps and being able to prioritize what it is that they do to implement the solutions that give them the most impact. And so a lot of times it's a discussion where clients have not been used to implementing security services, have been very familiar with implementing IT services. So it's really kind of an education in addition to starting to look at a security landscape from a different perspective than they've previously looked at it.
Well, kind of let's get a little honest here, man. Like, so when you talk to these folks, right? And you look at their cybersecurity posture, are we going to use it's a 6 7? What are you
Only
finding?
my kids know 6 7. I don't know. But it's definitely we're catching up. I think it's definitely organizations, businesses, everybody's not created equal. The most of the companies that I talk to are really catching up. This is a very complicated area for them, and it's a high risk area. So they want to do the right things. They just need the right information and kind of the right direction. And it's hard to know when you're getting that because everything is based on kind of revenue, right?
Yeah.
I think everybody really wants to make a dollar, but at the end of the day, who's going to really care about the customer? I think that's one of the things that we bring to the table. We care. One of the reasons we got into the cybersecurity space is because we had been in the IT space for eons, and we realized by using third parties, we weren't getting the results that our customers were looking for. So what we did was we bought two fully functional security companies.
Mm.
One security company dedicated to offensive security, another security company dedicated to defensive security. And then we brought that into the fold with our IT services so that we could be kind of all things to everyone.
Right on. Look, man, you want to make a buck, but you also want to keep that buck.
Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
those cyber actors want to take your bucks away. So you've been tracking this MSP and MSSP game. So what are you finding, man?
Yeah. So, I mean, when we started out, and if you go back like maybe 6, 7 years ago, you'll notice that all of your security vendors were coming out with a particular product. And it did, pretty much one thing or one or two things. And they had a team on top of that product, and they had a team and a product. And the challenge that we had then was, if something, fell outside of what that team and that product did, they would blame it on whoever else was there. And so you had a really significant blame game between the EDR vendors, the SIM vendors, the MDR vendors. You had kind of everybody pointing fingers. We don't own that. We just own visibility. We just own observation. We own vulnerability, management, just understanding where they are. But we don't understand it. We don't own the remediation. We don't own the fix, the stopping the threat. And because you had kind of all of this finger pointing, there was really this need, from all the companies that we talked to really be able to look at all of the different pieces and then put them together. So our goal was really to kind of approach it that way. The way we did it was we used multiple products, but we put the same security operations center across all the products so that when it came down to seeing something, we wanted that capability to stop it almost immediately. And so we did it very manually, kind of with our team. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense, man. It's sometimes it seems very logical to me, but I'm not quite sure how you do it the other way. But you know, kind of, the blame game is still going on, man. And nobody wants to give up their job and their product. So I think we're going to be living with that for a while yet. But look, obviously offering more comprehensive solution is the name of the game because if you're only offering pieces of pie, right? If you're only locking up the front doors and the side windows, right, of the house, there's a few more doors and back doors that these folks can get in. So it doesn't kind of make sense. So it's obvious to kind of bring it together. Are you finding that today's with the AI and all the various cool technologies, it's helping us to mediate some problems? Is it getting easier? Is it the same, or is it getting harder?
Yeah. So I definitely would say that these tools are adding complexity. But one of the things that I do see vendors doing is they're getting it. They understand that this is not a siloed threat. So I see some of the big vendors making acquisitions. They're changing from just being an EDR vendor to being a MDR vendor, having XDR, having the ability to remediate, creating integration. Now they're buying AI guardrail companies. So there's a lot of big vendors in this space that realize that this siloed approach has got to go and it has to be a much more consolidated approach. And if you look at the way they've built their model so that it can be one team that's managing the model. And so if we want to be ahead of ourselves, we look at what they're investing in. We look at what large companies are investing in. We can see what they're investing in. We can see what their acquisitions are, and we can kind of see exactly what's happening in this threat landscape. So if I was just to look at the market and try to figure out, what it is that companies need to do or what MSPs and MSSPs need to do, you can clearly see that there's a consolidation approach. We need to be able to see all sides of the equation, and we need to be very quick at, figuring out what to do next. So that's what I see in the platforms. I actually see that also in the different companies. Our company, for instance, is doing just exactly that.
So Cando, it's sort of like it makes logical sense, right? But then you're gonna have let's assume this, right? You're gonna have like 10 companies with a platform that's done a pretty good job of consolidating, some lesser, some better, some whatever. And then now you put your eggs in one basket, so to speak. I want to pick, number B, or whatever, and then B gets hit. All their clients get hit. So you go, maybe I should have had a B and a C and a D type of mix here. Um, are you thinking that you got to diversify a little bit and maybe not really drop all your eggs in one basket? Because if one goes down, like the dominoes, man, all the people in that camp goes down, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm looking at it more as a risk calculation. I think you do have to think about, what is the risk, and you have to look at the effectiveness of what the different vendors are doing. So everybody's not created the same. Everybody doesn't do things the same way. In other words, I really love the MITRE, evaluations, that I see people getting, more and more away from, but kind of these types of tests that really try to, use a threat actor's tactic, techniques, and procedures to see how these systems respond and which ones catch what, and then using that as kind of your judge. Because I think the key factor is speed.
Mm.
It's no longer this thing about being able to have dual systems, and it's really speed. And if the threat actors are going after speed, and as a defender we have to go after speed, and 9 times out of 10 the only place that you really get the speed is in a consolidated platform. But again, consolidated platforms are not made equally. We do need to understand the components that make up those platforms, and then we need to pick and choose the right ones that effectively lowers our risk. But at the end of the day, we have to understand what our risk is to begin with, and then we can pick the right solution to lower our risk. But this false sense of security, we can't, run with a false sense of security without any research, any development. We have to have those types of things to understand what we're getting ourselves into, because
Yeah.
security is about the details,
Yeah, man,
unfortunately.
it's not plug and play and plug it and forget it. These things are having a life of its own, and you've got to keep adjusting. As new threats come out there, you got to figure out that, are you ahead of the curve? Are you behind the curve? Do you care? Do you want to have a life? How much time you want to spend fixing challenges? But I think the key challenges is with the attackers constantly on the offense, right? I think defense is kind of cool, but you got to add a little bit of offense there. You got to be thinking a little bit ahead of the crowd, because if you're just waiting for something to happen, what happens that day when you have a dental appointment or you got to go to a doctor? You're gonna miss the time, and as you said, speed is critical. Are you finding that now you're able to react much faster to these threats, even before the customer even become aware that there has been a hit on them?
I definitely think that we are able to react faster. I still think that we're not as targeted as we need to be. So we're reacting faster. So people are looking for things like mean time to detect, mean time to respond, all of those types of metrics, but actually they're really not the metrics that's needed for kind of this time. This time is really, how much time does it take to actually stop the threat? Stop business disruption. That's really the number that we need, and not like these metrics that really don't give us, an accurate depiction of what's happening between the attackers and the defenders. Right now, I think that the attackers have the leg up. And the reason I'm saying the attackers have the leg up today is because, all the companies that I'm talking to want to innovate with AI. And they've putting AI in their systems. And I mean, you've probably seen the news about Claude Bot, Moltbot, all of these AI tools, which are really riddled with the capabilities for an attacker to kind of commandeer information, and there's not enough, guardrails put around them. Now, I do see vendors putting, buying companies that are doing guardrails. I just wonder if these guardrails are really to the level of the threat actors. Because, once we start putting these guardrails in, a lot of people are going to think that, yeah, I'm covered because I got a guardrail that watches my AI, authenticated, and I wonder if our guardrails are going to be, strong enough to be able to deal with what we're going to see from AI and the threat actors using it as kind of the main component of what they're doing. I mean, we're also seeing consolidation of threat actors,
Yeah,
shiny hunters,
they're
you know,
merging.
this and scattered spire getting together, and they're being very successful. They're bringing down multi-billion-dollar companies. Sort of Land Rover, Jaguar incident, and that to me is very scary. And then they went after kind of Salesforce and all of the integrations. So
Mm,
I think as defenders, we really have to keep our eye on the because the attack only has to be right once. We have to be right all the time,
sure.
and that's a pretty impossible task. So we need to really prioritize exactly where those threat actors are focusing on and be able to, leverage that.
Well, I can answer the question, but if the companies are buying to put the guardrails up for AI is going to work, the answer is no. And so let's go back to the drawing board and see how far we get. Is it
Yeah.
better than not having any? Sure. But good luck with that. And it used to be, remember the movie Jaws, just when you thought the water was getting be nice, it's like it was kind of getting the handle on the cyber game. And then, with COVID was like, maybe, we probably got this to a certain degree. But then AI comes in and just obliterates, right? The kind of the attack surface. Now it's like it's from everywhere. It's like we gone from playing 2D chess to 3D chess. I don't know, 10D chess, whatever. It's the space, as you mentioned, is getting complex, and it's no longer an easy game. You really gotta pay attention. So when you look at the world of the companies out there that you guys are trying to protect, if you had to give them one decent piece of advice, like that's it, you got one advice to give them, what would you give these people out there who is trying to make sure they don't get hit?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I see a lot of is this: there's a budgeting issue. It's always a cost conversation. What I would encourage every business is to really understand your risk posture. What's actually an acceptable risk and what's not an acceptable risk. And then that should, produce the needed budget to put in place the right tools. It doesn't make sense to spend, if let's say the spend is going to be, X amount of dollars, to spend half of the X and not get the coverage, with that investment, because you're just wasting money. So it makes sense to put in what it costs to actually do it, so that when you have it in place, you kind of feel a sense of, at least that you're addressing some of that risk, raising your level higher, so that it's not the college kids that went and got a ransomware as a service kit and the phishing as a service kit, that they hit your business and all of a sudden, your revenue is going out the window because, there's these people that's using these tools. You really want it to be, at least it got to be somebody sophisticated.
Oh man, it's a great part-time gig though. If you can
Yeah,
get it, it's
same.
anyways, we don't want to encourage people to do this stuff, but
Right,
yeah,
right.
it is what it is. Look, the challenge continues, and the reality is between budgets, it's convincing those C-suite people, right, to part with their money. And on one hand, economies are kind of like difficult these days. People are not is a little confused. They're not quite sure what the certainty level is on planet Earth today, and of course, everybody is like holding back a little bit. But then they're thinking, wait a minute, we got to punch through with AI because that's going to give us a competitive advantage, so we can clobber our competition. And then the person in the back of the room says, but wait a minute, if you implement AI like this, you're putting the whole company at risk and the IP and all this stuff. And it's like, you shut up. It's we gotta make money before we could save it type. So in other words, it's a difficult conversation. And quite honestly, it's the same person in the room that's need to make this convo, right? Because a lot of people are thinking the soft skill of explaining the why cyber matters is quite different today, you know? You really got to have the right words. You got to really be, getting to the right people, and you got to make them believe, that this is in their best interest. Otherwise, they just look at it as another expense. And man, how many times have we heard this, Cando? Why am I paying you, man? I have no problems, you know? Or the worst is you get
Yeah.
hit. Hey, why am I paying you? We just got
Hey.
hit.
Right. Right.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't. How do you make the case? Is it really just about risk tolerance and risk posture? How do you convince them to fork over the cash?
Yeah, I mean, see, I think it's all, I think it does have to do with risk posture, risk tolerance, and understanding the business impact of what these risks are. Because the last thing I want somebody to do is make a decision, not understand the risk, and then find themselves in a situation that they can't tolerate, like Land Rover. You know
Mm.
what I mean? Like disaster recovery drills, incident response, tabletop exercises, you know, making sure with penetration testing, with actual penetration testers who can use adversarial emulation tactics. Those are things that you don't want to, save money on. Those are the things you really want to make sure that you're doing so you understand the impact of what happens. You can't stand on the side while everybody does a tabletop exercise and not bringing the executives so that they don't understand what the business impact is. If they can understand the impact and they want to take that risk, then by all means they can take that risk. The challenge that I see all the time is that it's companies that don't understand the risk, that are taking risks, and then they find themselves in an unacceptable position after the fact.
Yeah.
So,
Well, let's
yeah.
pick on the Brits again, man. Mark and Spencer, right? You got a truckload of legacy systems, and it's like, who's taking care of that stuff? Anyways, that's just a little bit of a timbit there. Look, the reality is and I found this tip, and I'll share it here with some MSSPs that has been able to enlighten me of how they actually try to get these C-suite people to fork over the cash, right? And it comes down to when they're getting these attacks, right? Is to properly document it and show the actual executive suite people that, hey, you know what? The last 5 days, whatever, right? You got like 50 attacks, right? And here's what we protected you from. And this one almost got in, right? So we had to back it up here, and we did this. So it's kind of like you got to show the bruises, if you go training, you got to show that you've been training. Got to show a bit of the sweat that you are defending these people. So if you just say, man, I'm not going to give them a report about the things I protected them, from, right? Then they really don't know what you did. So I would encourage, if you want to use that tip, MSPs out there, whenever you get a hit or close hit, blow it up, man, because that's the kind of thing that I think makes humans react. Does that make sense, or is it too
That makes
much?
perfect sense. Perfect. Not only does that make sense to kind of the, C-suite, but all of your regulators, you have to demonstrate that you have a posture that's capable of doing the things that we want it to do. And the only way you're going to be able to demonstrate that to the scrutiny of an auditor is really with documentation. So that's definitely an important piece of it. When I talk about risk, I'm assuming that all of that you got all of that included in it. You know what I mean? Like understanding what you're getting. Now, a lot of times what I do see is that there's a lot of business owners or people in high up positions that don't want to see the details. They really want the 30-foot, 30,000-foot view. And sometimes at the 30,000-foot view, they don't get the feel of the impact. So we need to make sure that that feel of the impact comes through. And if like I said, if they can understand what that is and they decide to forego it, in this industry now, the ecosystem that we see today, there's the high regulatory requirement. You see the government implementing kind of the CMMC and that CUI rule. All of those things are really just equating to the fact that As a country, as business owners, as people in the environment, the level of threat is much higher. You know what I mean? We're not 15, 20 years ago when you could have a security solution and not see a threat for 20 years. We're not at that point anymore. We're at a point where, this is happening on a day-to-day basis. Threat actors are literally just scouring the internet for, susceptible environments, and people are just becoming victims regularly. So
No doubt. Look at if you can't get in if you can't get cyber insurance, it's a pretty good sign that something is wrong.
that's right. That's right. That's right.
Double check. The last time I checked, the only companies in the world who hate losing money than everybody else on the planet are insurance companies. They
That's
want your
right.
premiums. They don't want to pay out that stuff, man. So look, it's getting regulated. The game is changing for sure, and what you guys are doing and helping companies keep abreast makes a lot of sense. And I'll leave you with the last word, man. What do you want, the community to know about your company and what you do in it, and how do you help people?
Yeah. I mean, our approach has always been stop business disruption. It's not about alerts and alarms. It's literally stopping that attack. And the position yourself in the best place to be able to stop that attack, you need both sides of the equation. It can't just be cybersecurity. It also has to be IT. The combination of both is what gives you the security that you need, because the way that you approach these threat actors has to be quick and it has to be across everything. So if you got your care and maintenance there and you got your security services together, it's only natural that you'll have this capability to quickly address kind of the things that you're able to see. And I think, when I look at the way we're approaching cybersecurity and IT services, we have that all in approach. Security first, and then make sure that we have all of the layers to create kind of, an effective defense against the adversaries.
Right on. And what's the website for people to learn more?
Yeah, they can go to www.allcovered.com, or they can go kmbs.konicaminolta.com. Either one is going to get you kind of to the same place, really.
There you go. Well, hey man, it used to be fun when it just be scared to go back in the water because of the sharks. Now we got we got bigger fish to fry here, man. Um, Kendo's been a pleasure, man. Keep us posted and continued success. Cheers.
Will do, will do.